Hi everyone, back after a long hiatus, and I've already tried to film this video once, so we're doing it again. A few days ago, or like a week ago, I was at my mom's house in Rome, and I just had the impulse. I missed being on here, and I missed adding my 2 cents into the conversation and the community and chatting with you guys and miss my friends on here. Um, so I said to myself, you're gonna film your best of 2024 video. And I did the whole thing, bam, 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 and then I left my headphones, my Bluetooth headphones, like in another room, and they were connected to my computer, so no sound was recorded. The problem with waiting forever to film another video is that it suddenly feels so unnatural and you just want to stop all the time and just regret opening the camera. Since most of the books on this list, I chose 10. Maybe I'll do 11 because as I look at the list, there's one that I do think about that I didn't include. But I'll try first to speak about the books that I have less talked about on this channel in the last year. So let's just begin. So, and hello from Sleepy Jacob. To be also clear, these are not 2024 release books. I don't necessarily read that many new books, to be honest with you. I do read quite a lot of backlog. I'm sure there will be a new release on here, but sometimes I don't even keep track of when things are published unless I'm lucky enough to like receive an advance copy or something. The first one that I'll, in no particular order, Scenes from a Childhood by Jon Fosse. Jon Fosse is a really, really interesting Norwegian author. Most people, if they're familiar with him, are familiar with his Septology series. And Scenes from a Childhood is a smaller, tiny book that has a few different sections. I'll link below a really interesting interview with Jon Fosse. I think it's for the Louisiana channel, where he talks about writing and his process, and he has a lot of silence built into his books, and especially in the context of his plays. You'll notice that people don't speak to each other in the way that we speak to each other. It's like in a different kind of cadence with different language and a lot of emphasis on silence, and how he does that is super interesting, and how he talks about that in his interview is also very, very interesting. And he also speaks there about the specific Norwegian dialect that he writes in, which is very important for his the language and his particular style as well. Scenes from a Childhood is exactly that. It's like scenes from his childhood. And there is one in a kind of vignette-y way, which I always really like. And there's one particular section called, I think one of the translations is called Dreamt in Stone, which is this sort of idiosyncratic conversation between two characters about an avalanche. But the avalanche is a symbol for me, it was like grief or heartache or something. Very, very beautiful. I want to keep working with that text and keep reading it, so I'll link that as well below. There's a version of it on Granta. So Jon Fosse is really an author that I enjoyed discovering last year, and I really look forward to reading more. Aftermath on Marriage and Separation by Rachel Cusk. You know, if you watch this channel, that I am a big Cusk fan. Although her nonfiction is, well, she's got a big body of work that I have by no means read all of, but I've read more of her fiction than her nonfiction. This is on her marriage, and specifically written after her separation and her divorce. I thought this was one of my favorite Cusks. So strong. She's so crystal clear sharp um, way she describes processing her separation was both like hard and also like funny at times. And I just thought that this book was amazing. So many sentences that I was like, fuck, like she is so good. She's so good, in my opinion. So I really, really enjoyed reading on this particular subject through her lens. Very honest, brutally honest, like always. So I thought that was really beautiful. Okay, what are some other ones that I have spoken less about? Still Life with Oysters and Lemon on Objects and Intimacy by Mark Doty. This is an art criticism book that is also mixed with personal narrative and memoir. If you like books on art, you should definitely pick this one up. It's very, very tiny. I picked this up just on a whim at a bookshop in the West Village. And Sarah, if you're watching this, who's lovely, when I brought it to the register, she was like, oh, I think you're gonna really love this one. And I really did. It's Mark Doty speaking about still life paintings, like for example, a Flemish still life painting of oysters and lemon, possibly by a Dutch painter, if I'm not mistaken, Dutch or Flemish. And just speaking about seeing, like what is seeing, what is living, what is the essence of life, you know, when you paint objects and specifically like food and things like that, like things that have that are alive, that can rot and things like that. What does it mean to look at a painting of this frozen life? And the intimacy of looking and the intimacy with objects. And there is a section as well where he speaks about his partner, losing his partner, grief, their home, their interest in objects. And I thought that was really beautiful. I know for Sophie, Biblio Sophie, that section for her was less interesting. And for me, I had the opposite. Like I really, really enjoyed the personal aspects of this. But I just thought it was a really great book. I mean, if you are interested in art, queerness, still life paintings, reflections on seeing, I think you would like this. The Pisces by Melissa Broder. I finally read this book in 2024. I was late to the party. I had so much fun with The Pisces. My partner Ohad and I started listening to it when we had like a few long haul drives, and it was like the perfect thing to drive to. And we both really enjoyed Melissa Broder's podcast, Eating Alone in My Car. So to kind of like get to know her and her very specific California voice through her podcast, and then have her narrate the Pisces. It's like, I don't even remember the main character's name because for me it's Melissa Broder. Yeah, it's about a woman studying Sappho to write her, I think, her PhD paper on Sappho. And she separates from her boyfriend, and she has a lot of issues with men and sex and intimacy, and she joins a kind of group therapy and moves to Venice Beach to stay in her sister's home on the beach and watch her dog. And like Melissa Broder character, it's very messy, and questionable choices are made, and she falls in love in a sexual relationship with a merman. So yeah, woman with fish, erotic. I loved it. I thought it was super funny, and yeah, I'm a big fan, and I enjoyed this more than Death Valley for sure. Death Valley was nice, but I really had fun with the Pisces. Tides by Sarah Freeman. This is a fragmentary novel about grief and lostness. Our main character in Tides, it's been a long time since I've read it, but if I'm not mistaken, her and her partner and her husband's child passes away somehow. I don't know if it's through an accident or what, but I think they're dealing with the grief of a child, and she just leaves basically and moves to a kind of undisclosed European city, trying to kind of work through her grief, and is kind of searching for like extreme experiences in a way, or kind of like navigating feeling really lost in an unknown place and getting like an odd job, and also having a sort of sexual awakening or using it as well in a self-destructive manner. This book does deal with a bit like when one is in pain, how we kind of are sometimes driven to experience other painful things, maybe in order to feel something. Or very heavy book, but very, very beautiful. And I read it while I was traveling, really at the beginning of 2024. So it's been a long time since I read it, but it did stay with me. And it was really, a really good one. And I think in a fragmentary style, I'm like with a finger, like I'm your professor. I think the fragmentary nature of this book is very successful. Not that I want to use the word successful, because I don't even know what that means when it comes to a book, but for each person's something different. But for me, it really was strong, the fragmentary style, which I think sometimes can fall a bit flat. And in this case, it really worked. Spoken about this book quite heavily, so I won't go so much into it, but I think probably my favorite book of 2024, I can rank it like that, is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, translated from the French. She's a Belgian author. This is a kind of dystopian novel about a group of women who find themselves underground, locked inside a cage, and none of them have any memory of how they arrived there. Our main protagonist is the youngest one in the group, and the book is really about the search for knowledge. This book is bleak, very, 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 very sad, heavy, but hands down the book that made me stay with a certain feeling for the longest. Like, I closed that book, and it's also a lot about solitude, and I felt that I needed to be alone and I needed to experience solitude after reading it, and it really read to me as well like a kind of fable or almost like a biblical story. It kind of holds that, not as someone that comes from Christianity, but I feel like this sort of relationship you could have with a almost like a mythical text or a biblical text is sort of like what I felt for this book. The writing is so beautiful and really, wow, just such a good book. I don't want to tell you too much, but I think if you like something dystopian, but you want it to be very, very, very well written and explore a lot of deeper themes through the dystopian framework, then I really would point you in the direction of this. But get ready to feel down and dark. Another book I really enjoyed this year was a memoir called A Flat Place by Noreen Masood. This was a really beautiful book club pick of Katie James. So we read this book together. I don't think I was able to make the discussion The Zoom discussion, I'm like the worst. I'm never able to come, or I'm bad at also buddy reading books and being in book clubs, even though I want very much to be in them. Sometimes I'm not participating like I want to. That's something in 2025 I'd like to change. But this book was so strong for me, and I remember when I was filming this the first time that I read something that kind of summarized it. Yeah, this is the summary of the book. Noreen Masood suffers from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, the product of a profoundly disrupted and unstable childhood. It flattens her emotions, blanks out parts of her memory, and colors her world with anxiety. Undertaking a pilgrimage around Britain's flatlands, seeking solace and belonging, she weaves her impressions of the natural world with poetry, folklore, and history, and with recollections of her own early life. Masood's British-Pakistani heritage makes her a partial outsider in these landscapes, both colonizer and colonized, inheritor and dispossessed. Combines memoir, nature writing, and literary reflection to explore what can be drawn from these powerful places and to understand her own experience of complex trauma and post-traumatic stress, as well as grief and loss. I thought this was so, speaking of successful, very that. This is a perfect example of a memoir that doesn't necessarily deal, it's like not a celebrity, it doesn't deal with a very well-known historical date or event or account. It's like a normal human life that has all its complications, and like you don't need to know her or to have had the same experience as her to like get a lot from this book, which I think is the power of memoir in general. Yeah, this was beautiful. I would love to reread this. I loved the exploration of flat places and how she searches for those places to almost validate the feelings of flatness that she has, a kind of numbness. If you like memoir and you also like nature writing, this is a very, very good one to look at. And then I think the last two I'll share, I have spoken about as well at length, both by the Danish author Olga Raun. So I have My Work and The Employees as two of my top books of 2024. The Employees is a science fiction novel unlike any science fiction novel that you've read before. Very, very poetic, very also fragmentary, and deals a lot with what is humanity, what does it mean to be human, also about intimacy and objects, and takes place on a spaceship, with the book being made from statements of the employees, some of which are human and some of which are humanoid, and the kind of discussion between what makes a human. And it's very textural and sensual and erotic in a way. And it's amazing, incredible. I don't stop talking about this book to anyone that I know that hasn't read it. My Work is her book about motherhood, and is a big one. Do I have it here somewhere? Thought this was incredible, incredible. My Work and I Who Have Never Known Men are probably my top two books that I read last year. My Work is such a beautiful blend of forms. So at points it's a diary, at points it's a play, at points it's poetry, all following a mother who's having a very, very hard time after giving birth. Raun took a break, I think, from writing The Employees to write My Work. Or actually, no, it's the opposite. She tackled My Work, and I think in the middle couldn't continue and wrote The Employees and then went back to it, something like that. The kind of cyclical nature to like the mundane things in My Work, but wow, super powerful. If you like kind of brutal portrayals of being a mother and parenthood, I think that you would really enjoy this. And I just think Olga is fucking genius. Like, to me, she's absolutely genius. I'm due for a reread of this book. There is one particular moment that it becomes a play that is amazing and quite extreme and dramatic, and I really loved that. Also, like, following two characters, so it's almost like our narrator is split into two kind of different consciousnesses or identities. One that is writing the book that you are reading, and one that is experiencing motherhood. So I think it was also probably a device for Olga Raun to sort of be able to digest her own experience into this novel by kind of creating another self. If you don't like laundry, you won't like this book. There's a lot of laundry. Hi, okay, so something about this video is deeply cursed because finally, after filming this all over again, I forgot a book. So I'm just popping in from the future to say that another book on this list is Coexistence by Billy Ray Belcourt. These are stories, short stories. I've spoken about this book also on the channel before, but I thought for a short story collection, this was so great, and there was almost not a single story that I didn't enjoy. With short stories or essay collections, it's very common to have like some duds, and I feel like this one didn't really have duds. Billy Ray Belcourt is a queer Indigenous Canadian author. I really love his nonfiction and his poetry, and these stories were just beautiful. Like, I lent it to my friend Candace, who's probably watching this, and she also really, really loved it. And these are short stories about, queerness and how that is meeting being an Indigenous person, dating, Grindr dates, different relationships, on writing, on art, but all in the short story form that really works and is very heartwarming stories. All around, just a very poetic pleasure to read. If you're not familiar with him and haven't given his work a chance, you should run and do it. Okay, back to the video. But I could not forget that one, or could not let it go unmentioned. And then I'll just do my 11th honorable mention, which is Boulder by Eva Baltazar. She's a Catalan poet and novelist. This is a triptych of books, Permafrost, Boulder, and Mammoth. I have not read Permafrost or Mammoth, although I started reading Permafrost a few times and just couldn't enter it somehow. Boulder, though, I really enjoyed. A very small book about a woman who works as a cook on a merchant ship, and while she's traveling on the ship, she meets a woman that she falls in love with who calls her Boulder, and sort of ropes her into more of a conventional relationship than she ever imagined for herself, about queerness and parenthood. Boulder never imagined and was never drawn to having a child, and her partner embarks on becoming a mother, and it really creates a sort of crack in their relationship. Because Eva Baltazar is a poet, it does have a very poetic language. The underlines in this book, for me, are many and many. And yeah, I don't know why, like, if I had to choose 10 that it didn't end up on here. Um, but it definitely was a top read for me, so we'll give it the 11th honorable mention. Thank you for joining and listening, and please let me know what you read last year that you loved. I know that I'm super behind on this video. I watched everyone else's top 2024 books, and yeah, felt like I needed to include mine. Super random and like not at all connected. I wanted to share my new favorite beauty product. This is the Red Camellia Lip and Cheek Balm from Chanel. I got it in the duty free. I was recently working in Lisbon, and my colleague, choreographer that I'm working with, had this, and she loves it, and she let me use it while I was there in Lisbon, and I became like really obsessed with it, so I bought it at the airport. Love a multi-purpose balm, and if you're a dry lips person, this is really good for you. It's a very, very flattering color. It's a little bit like my lips but better color. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hope you're all doing well, and I have been reading, not that much, which is why I haven't really been uploading, because if the main focus of this channel is reading, if I'm not reading, I don't feel like I have much to talk about. But I did finish a book recently, so I think soon I'll make like a video about what I've been reading. Let's have a hopeful new year, as much as it's very hard to look forward with hope. I think we really need to come together and support each other and lift each other up and move forward with hope and determination and effort, because we're gonna need it. So yeah, anyway, feel free to reach out and email me or write me on Instagram or comment here. Would love to support each other and read together. So big love. Ciao.